Everyone who watched this movie thought they were watching a villain origin story. They weren't. They were watching a man who spent his entire life performing sanity for people who never once asked if he was okay. And if that sentence made you feel something, keep watching. Welcome to Movie Psychology Lab, the mind behind every movie. This channel doesn't analyze films, it uses films to analyze people. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the most dangerous thing a human being can do is spend a lifetime pretending to be someone they were never meant to be. On the surface, Joker is the story of a mentally ill man who spirals into violence after a life of rejection and abuse. That's what the reviews said. That's what the discourse focused on. But that reading misses everything. Joker isn't about a man becoming a villain. It's about what happens to a human being when the world refuses to witness them. Psychological concept, conditional existence. This is the belief that you are only allowed to take up space if you perform correctly, if you smile on cue, if you laugh at the right moments, if you make other people comfortable with your presence. Arthur Fleck has lived this way his entire life. Watch the scene where he's on the bus trying to make a small child laugh. He's not doing it to be kind. He's doing it because making someone smile is the only evidence he has that he deserves to be in the room. That's conditional existence. You don't live, you audition, every single day. Ask yourself, have you ever walked into a room and immediately started performing? Not lying, not pretending exactly, just adjusting, shrinking, becoming the version of yourself that takes up the least amount of space. If you have, you already understand Arthur Fleck better than you think. Stop, because this is where the movie becomes a mirror. Most people watching this aren't disturbed by Arthur. They're disturbed by how familiar he feels. Here's the uncomfortable part. The cage Arthur lives in wasn't built by his abusers alone. It was built by every person who looked at his pain and looked away. Society doesn't create monsters. It creates people who stop believing their pain is real, and then act surprised when those people stop pretending. But the cage is only the beginning, because the real damage isn't done by the world outside, it's done by the voice inside. Psychological concept, shadow self. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of yourself you've been taught to suppress, the anger, the darkness, the part that doesn't apologize, doesn't shrink,
I just hope my
doesn't
death
perform.
makes more sense than my life.
Arthur has a shadow, and it dances. There's a scene, just Arthur, a small bathroom, the door locked. No audience, no mother calling, no social worker with a clipboard. He moves like a different person, fluid, present, alive. That's not the Joker emerging, that's Arthur, for the first time, being allowed to exist without an audience. The shadow isn't the evil part, it's the honest part. And you have one too. You felt that version of yourself, the one that says what you actually think, that doesn't apologize for existing, that doesn't perform patience when it feels rage. You felt it, and you've pushed it back down. Because you were taught that version of you was dangerous. But here's what nobody asks. Dangerous to whom? People don't suppress their shadow because it's wrong. They suppress it because the people around them can't handle it. The shadow gets buried not because it's evil, but because it's inconvenient. And when you bury it long enough, it stops asking permission. But there's something in Arthur's story that goes deeper than a repressed self. Because he didn't just suppress who he was, someone else told him who he was allowed to be. Psychological concept, delegated identity. This is what happens when you have no stable sense of self. So you build your entire identity around someone else's approval, a parent, a mentor, a society, a dream. Arthur's controller is layered. His mother, who needed him to be her happiness. Thomas Wayne, who represented a world that never had room for people like Arthur. The city itself, Gotham, which needed someone to blame. Watch the moment Arthur discovers the truth about his origins. He doesn't react with rage immediately. He sits with it. Because for Arthur, the truth doesn't free him. It erases him. If his entire story was a lie, then who is he? You've had this moment. Not a revelation about your parents necessarily, but a moment when the version of yourself you'd been building, the career, the relationship, the identity, cracked. And underneath it, there was just silence. No solid ground. That's delegated identity collapsing. And it is one of the most terrifying experiences a human being can have. Look at this carefully, because this is the moment most people think Arthur snaps. He doesn't. He stops pretending there was ever anything to hold on to. Here's a truth that will make you uncomfortable. Most people never build an identity. They borrow one. From their parents, their culture, their job title, their relationship status. And they spend their entire lives defending borrowed furniture as if it were their own. Arthur's tragedy isn't that he lost himself. It's that he was never given the conditions to find himself in the first place. Be honest. Have you ever questioned whether the life you're living is actually yours? Drop a period in the comments if that hit somewhere real. Psychological concept. Identity dissolution. This is the clinical term. The plain language version is this. The story you've been telling yourself about who you are stops making sense. And without that story, there's no buffer between you and the raw terror of existing. Arthur's breakdown isn't the violence. The breakdown happens in a stairwell, alone, long before the gun. It's the moment he stops trying to make sense of his pain and starts letting the pain make sense of him. He wasn't looking for permission to become the Joker. He was looking for permission to stop being Arthur. Ask yourself, have you ever been so exhausted by the gap between who you are and who you're performing that you didn't care anymore what filled that gap? That any version of yourself felt better than the version you'd been maintaining? That exhaustion. That specific exhaustion. That's where Arthur lives for the entire film. You think this is about a man losing his mind. It's not. It's about a man who finally stops lying. Breakdowns don't come from weakness. They come from too much endurance. From holding a shape that was never yours for so long that your body finally refuses. The world calls it a collapse. Psychology calls it a decompensation. Arthur calls it the first honest thing that's ever happened to him. And that's what makes the transformation so disturbing, because it doesn't look like destruction. It looks like relief. Psychological concept. Negative identity formation. When a person is denied the conditions to build a positive identity through love, recognition, stability, they sometimes form one in opposition. Not, I am this, but I am not that. I refuse that. I destroy that. The Joker is Arthur's negative identity. It's everything Gotham told him he couldn't be, seen, powerful, undeniable. Watch the stairs sequence, the walk, the dance, the way his body moves like a person who has, for the first time, full permission to occupy space. It's not menacing at first. It's sad. Because you're watching a man finally feel at home in himself, and the only place he could find that home was here. He didn't become the Joker, he stopped erasing himself. And here is the most disturbing truth in the entire film. The Joker isn't what Arthur wanted to become. It's what was left after everything they took from him was gone. Negative identity isn't chosen. It's what forms in the vacuum when recognition never comes. You've built parts of yourself in opposition too. The person who decided to never need anyone because needing people hurt too much. The person who became hard because soft got punished. The person who stopped hoping because hope felt like the most dangerous thing in the room. That's not strength, that's negative identity. And it protected you, and it cost you something. He didn't lose his mind. He found the only version of himself the world left room for. This isn't Arthur Fleck's story anymore. It's the story of what happens to any human being who spends too long performing existence for an audience that never applauds. Most of us will never become the Joker. But every single person watching this has, at some point, felt the specific exhaustion of being unseen, of performing competence, of laughing when nothing is funny, of shrinking yourself to fit inside a space that was never built for you. And somewhere in you, there is a version of yourself you've been suppressing, not because it's wrong, but because you were taught it was too much, too honest, too loud, too real. The question Joker asks, the question it never answers directly, is this: what happens to that part of you if you keep suppressing it? What does it become? I want you to think about one version of yourself you've buried, not destroyed, buried. It's still there, waiting. What was it? This isn't just movie analysis, this is understanding people. If this video made you think about yourself more than the movie, that's exactly what it was supposed to do. What movie should I break down next? Drop it below. I read every single one. Take care of yourselves and take care of your shadows.